So in today's web dev tip, what we're going to do is set up a front-end app for our Rick and Roll project so that the user's got somewhere to actually generate these short URLs and actually access the project in general. So we're going to add this into our NX mono repo. So if you remember way back to when we started this project, we set up all of our tooling using NX so we can keep all of our APIs and also front-end projects and anything else that we're using inside one Git repository. So what that means is we need to use the NX tooling to add a new project into our folder where everything else is kept and also into the Git repository, and then we can use that in our pipeline to actually build the project and deploy the front-end code to the DigitalOcean server as well. So there's a few different options that we've got here. What I'm going to do for our project, because all we really need is a single page with a form on it that the user is going to type something into, or even just click a button just to get one of these short URLs. And so all we need is a bit of HTML and a bit of JavaScript to do that. So I'm going to choose this Narwhal, which is who make NX, the web application builder, and this will just give us a very simple boilerplate HTML project. We can actually use web components with it as well, but we probably won't do that in this project. But it will just give us all the scaffolding and all of the boilerplate code to use things like Sass and TypeScript and things like that directly in the project. So we don't need to worry about any of the tooling for things like Sass transpilation or TypeScript transpilation. This will do it all for us. If you do want to choose a different front-end framework, the NX does provide plugins for React and also for Angular as well. So it's a very similar process. You just use a different builder, but if you are following along, we're just going to stick with the web application here. So we just need to first of all install this builder. So there is actually an npm package. If you search for it, it'll be Narwhal Web. We just need to add that to our project and our repository first. So what we'll do first of all is just install that. So we'll say npm install. We'll save it as a dev dependency because it's obviously not needed for production once the code's built, and it's Narwhal Web is the builder. So if we just install that, it might take a moment or two just to fetch all of the packages and install that. And once that's done, we can use the NX CLI command to actually generate a new application. So let me first of all just clear the console here. Let's try and make that a bit bigger there for you. So when we set up our NX project initially, it kind of went through a bit of a wizard and asked us to set up the project for the Express API. So we didn't actually see the command to actually generate a new project within our NX workspace. So that's what we're going to do now. So we just use the NX tool and then we say generate, and then we just pass in Narwhal Web. And if you just do that straight away, it will just give you a bit of an error saying, I don't know what that generator is. So what you need to do is need to specify the type of project that you want to use with Narwhal Web. I don't know if they support libraries at the moment, but that's a whole another story. But what we want to do is generate an application, which will obviously host some code for us. So if we do that, we get a little wizard again, a bit like when we set up the project. And you've just got to give your project a name for the front-end application. So it could be something like front-end app or something like that. You might want to prefix it with Rick and Roll front-end, for example. And so I'm probably going to go with something like that. So Rick and Roll Web. And looking back, we probably should have called the Rick and Roll API, Rick and Roll -API, just to separate it off from there. But that's another story. We'll see if we can update that at some point. So if we just run that wizard now, you can see you get a choice of what type of style to use. So I quite like Sass, so we'll choose that. And it'll just go away and install all of the necessary bits and pieces that it needs. I think it uses things like Babel and Webpack plugins and so forth to actually transpile the Sass and the TypeScript. But as I said, we don't need to get involved in that and don't need to worry about it. But what you should find now here is we've got a new project in here as well. So Rick and Roll -web. And if we have a look inside of the source and app folder, you can see we've got an index file here. And so this might look more familiar to you if you're used to doing front-end web development. So we've just got a standard index page, which is actually building a web component and loading that into the page. But if we wanted to put something like a H1 tag in here, welcome to Rick and Roll, for example, that will display on our page no problem, and this will do the same sort of thing as the API and actually build the project into a state where we can deploy it a bit later on. So you may also have noticed that there's another folder in here, which is Rick and Roll Web E2E. So the E2E stands for end-to-end, and this is an end-to-end testing framework using a technology called Cypress. And what this will do is it will actually load up your web app in the browser or in its own little contained browser, and you can actually automate some tests against the website that you've got there as if a real user was interacting with it. So we may at the end of the project just set up a couple of simple E2E tests just to make sure that when we make any changes to our front end app, it doesn't actually break anything in terms of the user being able to use the website. So just a little note as to what that is. The final thing we're just going to do in this tutorial is to actually serve the web front end content. So to do that, go back to your terminal, and we're going to use the NX tool again. So we'll say NX run, and then we specify the project name. So it's Rick and Roll Web, and then we just pass in the command that we want to do, which in this case is just going to be serve. So it's very similar to the API. You just do the same thing, just run serve, and it will use the NX tools to work out how to serve this app, and it will give you some information about where it's running. So if we just run that now, and it should just build it for the first time. And so if we have a look up here, you should see, I think the standard port is 4200. So if we just go over to our browser and have a look at what we've got there, the first thing you can see is that we've got this welcome page, which has actually been generated from the boilerplate that NX has set up. And this is the web component, I believe, that they've created. But you can also see our H1 tag is there as well. So we've been able to actually update some content and put it on our web app. So we need to do a bit more configuration before we get this live, but then we'll be adding it into our CI pipeline and pushing this to our DigitalOcean server. But for the moment, we've got a working web app, locally at least, where we can start building out the front end interface for the users for our project. So that's it for this tutorial. Make sure you stay tuned for more web dev tips.